So hello, in our new world of travel, we wanted to come to you today and talk about traveling in the age of COVID. And so here on this in this Zoom call, you will see these all of these wonderful people have traveled since the lockdowns and since COVID. And so here we go. We assembled a lot of the questions that we seem to get over and over, and so we just wanted to address those today. But before we start, why don't we go around and say where you have traveled since COVID. So for me, I have been to Mexico twice. I stayed at Live Aqua in Cancun one time, and I stayed at El Dorado Casitas Royale one time. All right, Philip, what about you?
I went to Riviera Maya, south of Cancun. I stayed at Generations.
All right, Karis.
I as well did Riviera Maya just south of Cancun, and I stayed at the Grand Velas Riviera Maya.
Nice. Miss Les.
I just got back from Riviera Maya as well, but a little north of Playa del Carmen, south of Cancun. I went to the Valentine Imperial Maya.
Alyssa.
I went to the Riviera Maya as well and stayed at the Hard Rock Riviera Maya. And I'm actually going to Cancun tomorrow. So
Excellent. Miss Tara.
Where are you staying tomorrow?
I'm staying at Secrets Divine. So like right in the
That's
hotel
right.
zone.
That's right.
Excellent. Yeah. Tara.
My family and I stayed in Playa Mujeres at a resort called the Dreams Playa Mujeres.
All right, excellent. And I think you even have a wedding taking off for that property today and tomorrow, right? Our first post-COVID wedding, so that'll be fun.
That is correct. Yep, they're leaving
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
and tomorrow. So.
And if I didn't already say, I can't remember if I did, today is July 31st as we're recording this. So the things that we are saying are true as far as we know as of today. Over the last 5 months, news and situations change every hour. And so I just wanted you to know when today is. All right, so the first thing that people are asking us is, has the process of checking in at the airport changed, or how has it changed?
For me personally, they're preferring people use their apps. Like if you're, for example, if you're traveling with American, pull the app up on your phone. They're trying to get people to do more, like less physical boarding passes and more putting them on your phone. When we went through security, when I first got there, they just had us actually put our passports on the scanning machine. Usually you would hand it over to a TSA officer, but they had us put it on. We pulled out our mask to verify, and that's all we needed. I actually didn't even show my boarding pass at DFW because they can pull up all your information using your passport. So that it was actually a little bit easier than it ever has been in the past.
Yeah, I noticed also instead of you handing your boarding pass and your passport to the TSA agent, they have you place it on the scanner, pull down the mask. You do have to wear a mask. I flew out of DFW, which I'm sure we all did, but you do have to wear a mask at the airport and when you're on the plane as well.
I was surprised at how little it had changed. It seemed to be very similar. I went there much earlier than I normally go, expecting some pretty big delays, and there weren't. It was a pretty smooth process.
I thought it was very similar as well. I'm an old school paper boarding pass girl, and I got my paper boarding pass, and I did the priority check-in line just like I always do. But yes, when they did it at the TSA lane, they did have me put my own stuff, like they tried to touch stuff as little as possible, which is fine. All right. And this one, even the consequence has changed even since I wrote down this question, and that is, what happens if I don't wear a mask on the plane? So I went pretty early on my first trip to Mexico, and Philip, you flew to Iowa even before I went back to Mexico, and masks were required on the plane, but a lot of people just took them off or whatever. Well, the airlines have gotten hardcore about the masks. So what's everyone's experience with masks on the airplane?
Everyone was wearing one 2 weeks ago when we were on American Airlines. Every single person, every single flight attendant. It was very much required. And I respected that as well. I felt a little bit safer that everybody was. A couple other things, whenever you're boarding onto American Airlines, they were handing out these cute little bags with bottled water, snacks, sanitizing wipes, which was nice. And then also, a lot of things that the media don't doesn't tell you is that they clean out the air inside the cabin about every 90 seconds.
Which has always been true. That's not post-COVID. That's always been true.
Exactly. I felt
Yeah.
a lot safer on the plane than I thought I was going to. I was a little anxious about it since it was a full flight, but it was smooth. It was fine.
I flew Sun Country. I did not get a cute little bag with sanitizer, but everyone on my flight was wearing masks. Flight attendants, the passengers were all wearing masks. The flight I took was an early flight, so it was a 6 a.m. flight. I don't know if that had something to do with my plane being a third full, or if it was just less people traveling, but it was, I would say, probably about a third full. There were people who had stretched out entire rows to lay down, so there was plenty of room. The flight attendants asked that you be in your assigned seat for takeoff, but they let everybody move around once the plane got to altitude. And then I also noticed that they sent an email before the flight with their new safety protocols about the air cleaning and all of that good stuff. So it did make me feel more at ease.
The way there, we were on a fairly early morning flight too. The way there, it was just kind of understood. You wear your mask. It was like no questions asked. On the way home from Cancun, actually, the pilot came out, and usually they do their announcements in the cockpit. He actually stood at the front of the plane, made his announcements, and not that he was mean in any way, but he was very strict and basically said, wear your masks. Obviously, we can't social distance on board because that's not how planes are built. So wear your masks. He didn't want to get any complaints from the flight attendants of guests not following protocol, not wearing their masks. If you take a drink of water or eat something, of course, you can pull your mask down, but then put it right back up. So he was all business. Apparently, I'm sure he's heard a lot of different things complaining, but even in the airport before we departed, there was a gentleman who was causing issues and causing a scene about wearing his mask. And for one thing, I would never do that in another country before you get on the plane. But it was very clear in Mexico, especially everyone at the airport, it was just very understood. And if you weren't doing as was required, then they were going to ask you to put it on. And if you weren't cooperative, they would take extra measures. But yeah, it was very strict coming back from Mexico. They're hardcore about those masks and they mean business.
I had that same experience, Leslie, on my trip home from my first trip to Mexico, where he came back and he said, I expect you to protect my crew. And if you don't, then you will never fly American Airlines again.
Yeah. Bye. Mm-hmm.
And what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of people that are on this no-fly list now because of this mask thing.
Oh, wow.
So it's so many. I mean, I'm hearing hundreds. So I'm not sure they're giving a lot of warnings. It may be one strike you're out. So don't mess with this thing. Keep the mask on. They are dead serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's see, mask on the plane. All right, now getting down to the destination. What is the current situation with excursions in the various destinations? First of all, my first trip down, there really was almost nothing open. Like it was very early. I think I was there like 2 days after the destination opened back up for guests. So, but that has changed since then. So who else wants to address that?
Well, from my understanding, most of the eco parks are open. So like Shellha, Xcaret, and all of the water sports are pretty much back open. So if you're wanting to go snorkeling or deep sea fishing, I had some clients that caught some mahi-mahi over the weekend. And
Nice.
When my family and I went down, we went down to Isla Mujeres for the day. Mostly everything was open over there. Of course, all the major beaches, like public beaches, are still closed at this time. But if you're booking a tour, then of course that is still operating. One thing that I think is a huge plus is a lot of them are more private right now, just because the resorts are only opening up to 20 to 50% occupancy. There's not as many people down there as there usually is, which means not only private tours that normally cost hundreds of dollars to make private, but also there's so much water life out there right now. Like over 200 whale sharks. Deep sea fishing is at an all-time prime. There's just a lot more water life than normal because of less people.
What was that thing you guys just did with you're underwater and you had some apparatus?
Yeah, a buddy told me about that who works in Isla Mujeres. It's called wing diving. It's where you kind of pretend to be Aquaman for the day. I've been going down to Mexico so much that I feel like I've done every tour down there, and I had never even heard of this one, so I was excited to try it. So it was a lot of fun if you want to try something different. It's called wing diving.
Very cool. Have any of the rest of y'all done excursions?
Yes.
What did y'all
So
do, Les?
we did a catamaran. It was like a day trip to Isla Mujeres. And so I was
Nice.
further south. So it was maybe 45-minute drive from the hotel to Cancun to get on the boat. So when we got in the transfer, they had fewer of us. So in a normal transfer, they may take 10 people at a time, and there was only 5 of us. Once we got to the dock, they did our temperature check before we were allowed in. Now that's a little deceiving because my husband's arm was sitting in the sun the entire drive down. And so when they did the temperature check, he was, like boiling water. So they did it somewhere else because they usually do it on the arms. On the boat, I want to say they were only operating at 35% people that they normally do, which to
Which is
me,
great.
it is great. To me, there were still too many people, but it was much less than it would have been. And it was just a nice day. We sailed to the island. We spent a couple hours on the island, then they took us out to snorkel. It was a long day, but it was really nice, and they made it very easy. Everything seemed more exclusive, I would say, because it seemed more private to us. We didn't pay for a private tour, but because there were less people, it felt a lot more private. So it was nice.
And you notice everyone's been talking about Mexico things, and I think all of our trips have been Mexico. And I just wanted to put a plug in. Mexico has been the big winners if you're wanting to go somewhere this summer. Mexico is not requiring COVID tests like so many other destinations are. Jamaica, Punta Cana, St. Lucia, a ton of them are requiring COVID tests for you to go within 3 days and a certain kind of test, which are very difficult to impossible to get in time. So Mexico is your place this summer. All right, let's see. Is everything open at the resort? Who wants to take that?
I'll start. So I stayed at the Grand Velas, and they have 3 sections to the resort. The Zen section is their like tropical section, so it's in the center of the resort. That was completely closed. There were a few restaurants there, so what they were doing is they were rotating restaurants that they normally have in other sections of the resort at one main section where all the guests were kind of centrally located. So Bistro was the restaurant that they would circulate different cuisines at each night. So there was always at least 2 options for dinner to eat, or you could do room service. So that was the biggest thing I noticed that was closed. They had guests all in one section of the resort, which was the Grand Class. But the ambassador section was also open for the pool. They weren't advertising it because they didn't staff the pool, and honestly, the resort was under 10% occupancy. So when I went over there, it was just me and my girlfriend, and we were pretty much over there by ourselves the entire time. But they still had wait service at the pool, so we were still able to get our drinks without going back to the other section, which was really nice. But as far as things being closed, the restaurants was the biggest thing to me that I noticed. And the other thing I want to mention is that they have tailored their activities. So normally they have like group activities like Zumba, beach volleyball, all these different things that they do to keep the guests happy and entertained. They were tailoring those towards families or small groups of people that had traveled there together. And they were doing it at no additional cost. So it was kind of like having, a private yoga class or certain things that they would do at no additional cost that you would normally have to pay for to make private.
At Live Aqua, the gym, I think this is the case in a lot of resorts. The gym you had to make reservations to go to because they wouldn't allow any more than 5 people to be in the gym at any one time, which was never a problem. No one ever had trouble getting in. The water circuit in the spa was closed. You could still book certain spa treatments, like you could still get a massage, still get a facial, all that.
And
Yeah.
just to my point, for the spa treatments, at the Grand Velas, they did have their spa closed with the water circuits, but they were discounting the spa prices. So it's a great time to get the spa treatments as well.
For sure.
And I know Jay is down there right now at the Royalton, and they did the water circuit this morning. So the Royalton water circuit was open. So I think it just depends on the resort as far as the spas.
Well, and plus he's there today, whereas I'm talking about a month ago. So, so double check, let us double check your resort. And also for another thing, like at Live Aqua, swim up bars were closed, but at El Dorado, the swim up bars were open. So just depends. So you have to really know what's important to you and let us make sure that your vacation checks all those boxes.
Another question I keep getting, oh, that's my dog. Okay.
Well, that's all right.
One thing that I experienced at the Hard Rock, and I think this is the thing at a lot of hotels too, the nightclubs are closed. And I think for an understandable reason, no one's, staying apart. That's a very social thing. So
well, see, that's something I would never know in real life if a nightclub was closed. I will never know that.
Depends on what you're looking for. They had they made up for it. They did, and the main lobby area had live music every night, and sometimes dancers out there. So I think they try to make up if something's closed. But that was one thing I noticed. We usually like to dance.
Yeah. The question I keep getting is, are the beaches open? Are we going to be able to go to the beach? So while the public beaches are currently closed to
citizens,
in front of the resort, that beach is open. So you still can get your feet in the water. You could still hang out on the beach as long as you're staying at a resort. And then going back to what's open, what's not open, it has a lot to do with the occupancy level, like how many people are staying at the resort while you were there. When we were at Dreams Palmeiras, every restaurant was open. So it just kind of depends on how many people are staying there. And that's not just during COVID, that's
all the time, right? Yeah.
I was going to say too, where we were at the Valentine, the gym was closed, but a cool thing about that is they have an exclusive pool that's only for spa guests while you're using it. But because the gym was closed, we had a full extra quiet pool to use if we wanted to, because they weren't monitoring it. Obviously people weren't using the gym, so it wasn't for that. The spa was open, but you had to make reservations. Like Alyssa said, there wasn't a lot of nightlife, but there was a sports and music bar. So they did have stuff going on at night. It just, wasn't like club music dancing, which is not what I prefer anyway. But I mean, if people prefer that, it's probably not, nightlife is probably not what you're going to find at these resorts, but they're still supplementing that with something. We played pool at night. There was music. We still drank till, 1 or 2 a.m. if we wanted to. So, I mean, there's plenty to do. The swim-up bar was not open, but you could still sit at the swim-up bar, which is sometimes what I prefer because it's shaded and they have the stools in the water. So I enjoyed sitting there. And the bar on the other side on land was open. So the bartender would just come over to the side of the pool and take our order, or we got out for 5 minutes and took our order. It's certainly nothing to cancel your trip over. You can still bring your drink into the pool, sit at the swim-up bar. You just have to have someone bring it to you, or you have to get out of the pool for a minute. So it didn't bother me at all.
When I was at Generation, had a couple interesting things. Talking to them, they also, Generations is a family resort, but they own some resorts that are adults only. Their theory was that the adults only would come back a lot quicker. So they hadn't planned on opening Generations up as quickly as they did, and they said they were dead wrong. Families came back before the adults only did, so they had to open it up pretty quick. Luckily, they didn't lay off any employees, so they were really ready to go. Other thing is that they were required to have that kids club closed. So what they did is they, of course, had the employees for it. They just had them around the pool doing kids activities around the pool, kind of in an informal way. So they're still there to do things with kids. Just isn't a thing where you can check into kids right now.
You know what? That is such a good point, Philip. I said the same thing. I noticed how many kids there were, not only on our plane, but at the resort. We stayed at a family-friendly resort, so there were so many families.
They were shocked. That one came back much quicker than the other ones did.
To your point about family-friendly versus adults only, the Grand Velas, which I stayed at, was it's a family-friendly resort, but the Grand Class section is typically for adults only. The pool is 18 and up. But since they were at such a low occupancy and they were trying to keep everybody kind of grouped together in one section, the grand class pool was operating as a family-friendly pool. So if you're going to a resort that is family friendly, but you're staying in an adult only section, let us check for you so that we can verify if they are still operating that way.
Yeah, good point. So we talked about checking in at the airport and so forth. And then when we land, we've been talking primarily about Mexico, but when you land in destination, so it was my experience that the first little thing that was different was you walk past the scanner that was scanning everybody's body temperature. And
So cool.
I never saw anybody get stopped, but I think and I did ask, if you go through there and it shows that your body temperature is elevated, what happens? So what happens is they pull you to the side. They're going to actually take your temperature. If you are running a fever over 100.4, I think the magic number is, then they will bring in a medical person and evaluate you and may do a COVID test because obviously if you have COVID, I don't think anybody wants to spread it around. So that's what happened. But I never had any. Did any of y'all see anyone get pulled over for anything? Yeah, no.
I actually stood behind the guy and watched his monitor for about 5 minutes. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, I took a picture. Maybe I'll post it in the comments or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing, I did experience something a little different at the airport. When I was there and landed, we already went past the thermal, scanner, but they pulled everybody aside and went. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with COVID, but I'd never experienced this before. They pulled everyone aside into like a little, just a little area. Everyone had their own section, and they went through all your bags, asked you questions about if you had been
that happens.
exposed.
I got hit with that also.
But
yeah, our
everyone
whole
did it,
group.
so it was,
Our whole group did too. My theory of that is that there are just as many screeners at the airport, and they
Correct.
have less
People
people to
coming
pick
in.
on.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they
So
are
everyone gets it.
they're hitting all of us.
Yeah.
This is the first time in all of history that Ricardo has not been randomly checked on the way in or on the way out. So
Having traveled with Ricardo, I can testify that is the truth.
my
Yeah.
husband gets stopped randomly a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Random.
One thing I was going to note too, as far as symptoms go, I noticed during the check-in process, which maybe I've just never noticed it before, they were very clear about where their medical facility on site was and the hours of operation, so that if you are ever feeling ill on site, you know exactly where to go, who to call. There's a medical professional on site with the resort. So maybe I've just never paid attention to that before, but I felt like it was laid out a lot more clearly this time around during the hotel check-in process.
Yep,
Correct.
definitely. All right. So now about will I be able to come home to the US? Will I have to quarantine? So here in Texas, we, as of right now, July 31st, we do not have any quarantine orders in place for travel. So you do not have to quarantine when you return to Texas. And yeah, you've got coming home was just the same. You had to take a little health questionnaire down in Cancun before you get back on a plane coming into the States. You had to answer these questions on your phone, and then it came up with a QR code, and you had to show that QR code going back through security that you had taken it. But yeah, there's no weirdness. You're allowed to go. You're allowed to come home. You're fine.
My questionnaire, when I did the health questionnaire on the return from Cancun, it was a piece of paper.
Yes.
And I don't know if they had it as an option for QR or paper, but they gave us paper, and really it was just the person at security who was checking that when you go through, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's no quarantine, but I know I went to the dentist a couple days ago, and they had me fill out if I'd been out of the country, and I'm like, so you mean have I been anywhere that has a lower COVID problem than we have right here in Texas? Yes, I have.
Yeah.
really quick on that, I actually had to reschedule a doctor's appointment because I'd been out of the country. That was the only thing that I ran into that, I don't know, that was a problem.
I had to reschedule a dentist appointment. But again, that wasn't anything governmental. That was just, just their own office.
Yeah.
Their thing. We hit on very briefly about the resort and them having medical facilities there. I've talked to several of these companies, just an FYI. And if you get to the resort and they take your temperature, and if you are at the 104 or whatever, they are sending you to their medical person, and they are doing a check right there. And I have asked, and different resorts are doing different things, but some of them are actually have little parts of the hotel set aside that if people are testing positive or sick, they're putting them over there away from the rest of the guests. As the occupancy rate goes up, they may not be able to do that, but that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and the government is actually mandating how full the hotel can be. So, I think the occupancy is going to go up slowly. It's not just a matter of people wanting or not wanting to travel. It's how fast the government allows them to fill up their hotels. COVID test before traveling. Bahamas, St. Lucia, Punta Cana, Jamaica. Who else?
Aruba, Puerto Rico,
Barbados.
Yeah, so lots of places. What's the deal in Hawaii right now? September 1st with COVID test or without?
Yes, they've pushed back. There's a pre-arrival program that they're doing where you can bypass the quarantine for 14 days as long as you provide negative COVID test results. But they've pushed that back. It was supposed to start August 1st, but they pushed it back to September 1st.
Yeah. So, and also like yesterday, we went to do a Bon Voyage call for somebody, and yesterday the requirements changed for their destination. So it's important to really be on top of it. And it just underscores how important it is to use an advisor, because we spend all day, every day messing with this, and it would be crazy for a person to try and keep up with it. All right. So any last thoughts? What else have we not covered that people might be asking?
It was wonderful. Like in my experience, it was one of the best trips to Mexico. I think because the occupancy levels are so low, the service is all the more better because of the ratios. So I mean, it was wonderful. Everything about the trip, I honestly thought was perfect. And the little things that were different, like not being able to do the hydrotherapy, you still get a spa, like a massage. I think now is like the best time to go.
Oh, I think so too. And it's so easy to get a beach chair. It's so easy to, it's just so easy going. You can get a table at dinner. You can get everything you need.
I've got one. What was the situation as far as y'all being required to wear masks on property?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we didn't cover that. So I guess did not have to wear masks at either of the resorts that I visited so far.
Me either.
They basically said it's up to your discretion. If you feel more comfortable wearing it, do it. And if not, then you don't have to. Coming in and out of the resort we did, but once we were on property, we didn't have to.
Now, there are properties that are requiring masks for guests. Notably, the Riu properties are all requiring masks for guests. Hotel Escarret is requiring masks for guests. Who else am I missing?
Those are the two I know of.
Yeah, and they're, again, today's July 31st, so stay tuned.
Now, every employee I saw was wearing a mask. Karis, am I right in saying that yours and Valus were wearing the face shields and not masks? Is that right?
So yeah, most of the employees at the resort were wearing the face shield, and I had never seen this before, but they also had instead of like a mask where it was covering this portion, they had another form of face shield where it kind of like was a little bumper on their chin, and then another clear face shield to cover their mouth.
Interesting. Okay.
And so you could see their full face, so it made it much more personable to me, which I really liked.
I think that is one problem they're going to have with the masks, or you're really not making the connection, and hard to. And man, as I get older, it's hard. I don't know how much I read lips. Apparently, I read lips a lot. I couldn't understand anything anyone said, hardly wearing a mask in Mexico or U.S.
Totally. Like both resorts, mask and shield, and I was having to get right up next to 6 inches away from him. What was that?
Yeah, I take for granted my Spanish-speaking husband, because there's a little bit of lost in translation already, but with the mask, the resort staff had full masks and face shields, and they weren't in their summer gear. I mean, they had long sleeves, long pants. Oh, I felt horrible. But because of a small language barrier, and I can understand Spanish here and there, But with the masks on, it was even harder. So I'm very thankful that my husband speaks Spanish, because it was a lot easier to speak with those masks on.
All right, what else?
I guess I'll piggyback off of what Alyssa was saying. I thoroughly enjoyed our trip, even more so than normal, for a couple reasons. One, like she was saying, it just wasn't full of people. Nothing was ever busy and never crowded, which was lovely. One thing I think is really important to point out is the spas are running excellent daily specials. Because of the low occupancy. So be sure and wait to book your spa appointment till you get there. There's a little hint, insider tip. That way you can get a heavily discounted spa. And same thing with the tours as well. So like deep sea fishing or anything like that, they're running great specials on those currently. And one thing that my husband and I both noticed that we enjoyed more so than we thought we would is just having casual conversation with the guests and the locals and talking about something other than this disease that's taking over our entire world. But yeah, it was just truly lovely to kind of unplug, relax, and enjoy each other and enjoy the resort.
I was going to mention something to what Tara said too. In terms of there being less people, we happened to make friends at our resort, which obviously we always do. But I had some clients on site too, which was really cool. And what I noticed, because there was a group of about 6 or 7 of us, it was a lot easier to get a table together at dinner. When usually you're traveling with a group, it's near impossible to walk up and just get a table. It was so much easier because there were so many less people and tables were already spaced out 6 feet. So they just easily pushed them together, and we were still 6 feet apart from the other people. So if you are traveling with a group, right now is a great time. I'm not saying you can guarantee walk up and sit down right away, but it was certainly a lot easier than your normal summer months when resorts are packed and there's no way you're getting a table for an hour if you're traveling with more than 4 or 5 people. So I really liked that.
Yeah,
I'm going to piggyback off Tara's as well and say that with there being the lower occupancy rate, it really does help kind of get out of this world that we're in right now, where COVID is just the main focus of everyday life. It's nice once you get past the employees and everybody wearing the face shields and everything. It really is like you have your own paradise, and you don't have to worry about COVID and you know, all the requirements and everything. And it's just so nice to decompress and get away from that.
Another item is that I always think the people in Mexico are some of the nicest people I've ever met, and they're just the people that work in these hotels are just amazing. You know, multiply that times like 10 right now. They are so happy to have customers back. These employees are just thrilled. So, you know, go down there, tip the heck out of them, you know, and let's help their economy too.
And if I could just put a plug in for our friends at Eldorado and Generations, they did not lay anybody off during the whole thing. So they continued to pay their employees. And so we really need to get down there and support them. And, you know, down in Mexico, there's not PPP or EIDL or unemployment compensation or anything like that. So they really depend on us. And of all of your whole life, when do you need a break more than right now in 2020? I think right now, that's vacations are so sweet right now for that very reason. All right. Anything else?
I think so. It's good to see you guys.
I know.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all very much. Bye.
Bye.